Hi guys, in this lesson I would like to show you practical examples of use for action hooks. They are very simple things, okay, nothing so fancy. The goal is just for you to understand how they work and so you don't get lost in the explanation when we're creating the plugins. So let's start. Just remembering that the examples I'm gonna give you here are functions that take effect on the front end. But you can do the same thing with action hooks in the WordPress admin, okay? We'll do this a lot when creating the plugins, but now to be more practical, let's just stay on the front end. Another thing is that I'm gonna apply all my examples in the code of a theme, but keep in mind that you can and should do this also within the code of some plugin, alright? The first thing you have to know is that action hooks only work because of two functions that complete each other. The first one is do action and the other one is add action. The first one, do underline action, it sets an action hook anywhere in the WordPress code. So if you open up the WP settings PHP file, for example, and look here for do underscore action, you already have some of them here. For example, remember the plugin loaded and plugins loaded hooks, which I showed you in the previous lecture? So it's right here at those points, which are in one of the first files loaded by WordPress, that they're being defined. All this has logic, okay? These do action calls are not scattered in the code randomly. For example, the action hooks related to the presentation of the theme. First, there's a do action called setup theme. Let me see if I find it here. So here it is. WordPress uses this hook in case the developer wants to perform any action before the theme loads. And then there's the after setup theme also. So here it is. This one is available after the theme is fully loaded. At this point, the theme's functions.php file is also available, and you can use this hook to create menus, load translation files for the theme, add various types of theme support, etc. If you try to attach those actions to the setup theme hook, it won't work because it's too early in the code, and for example, the functions.php file won't even be available. By the way, I left a link there in the extra course materials so you can see what the WordPress loading flow looks like step by step. I think it's worth a look to learn more about how the CMS, how WordPress works. Well, but going back here to the explanation, the second function related to the action hook is add action. And this function will help you hook your callback functions, okay? So you can say that do action is the point in the code where the hook is available, and the add action is where you will in fact hook your callback functions. Let me give you a practical example. For that, I'm gonna use that plugin that I installed in the last video, and also the functions.php file of anything. For example, I'm gonna use the 2019 here. I'm gonna open the post called Hello World, this one here, and I'm gonna activate the plugin and show the action hooks. Here on the front end, you see that at this point where the post content begins, there is a hook called loop start, and at the end of the post, right here at the end, I have the loop end. That is, up here is where the loop that generates the post start, which is, by the way, a while loop. We'll see this in the course in more detail later on. And down here is where the loop ends. And WordPress makes these hooks available here by default, so the developer can perform any actions they want, okay? But it's also worth noticing that this only works for loops made according to the CMS standard. Okay, so I'm gonna go back here to the functions.php file, and I'm gonna paste a ready-made code snippet that I created earlier. Look, you don't have to copy the codes I'm gonna use in this lesson here and in the next one, okay? I'm gonna use them as an illustration only, okay? And they will also not be available in the course material because they are not part of the projects we create here in this course. So for now, just pay attention to what they are doing, okay? So what this code is doing here is adding two actions. First here on the loop start hook, and then on the loop end hook. For that, for each action, I'm using the add action function. The first parameter of this function is the name of the hook, and the second is the name of the callback function that will be fired on it. In this case, these two functions here. So here they are. So you can see here that the first callback does nothing more than add the opening div and a text saying that the loop has started. And the second one is right here. It closes the div with a message saying that the loop has ended. Notice though that these functions are not returning anything. When the hook is available, they will just stop the code, execute this portion of the code here, and this one here, and then return to the code flow where it left off. Now back at the front end, reloading the web page. And of course, it didn't work because we have the wrong theme active here. Let me come back here and choose the correct one this time. The 2019, of course. Now reloading here. You can already see that the content has appeared here. So hovering the mouse over the hook, I see the functions here. And down here too. Well, in fact, here it's not displaying, but I think it's a plugin specific bug. But the complete name of the hook should appear here too, right? The same way we have it up here. If I go ahead and stop the plugin and inspect the code, here you can see the div I created, test div. It opens and closes right here. Activating the plugin again. As we didn't set any priority in the add action, the default priority here is 10. You see it? But I can change this. Let's suppose I want to add a section inside this div I just created, but this time using a different callback function. So let's go to the editor again. I could have code like this. Here I just put priority 10 on the divs that I created before. And I just reordered the code to make it clear what is going on. So here after the function that opens the div with priority 10, I just created another function in the same hook in the loop start, but now with priority 11, as you can see here. And here before the closing div, I closed the section on the same hook in the loop end, but with priority 9 this time, since the other function had priority 10. Remember? Now refreshing the page. Now I have the functions fired in the correct order. And also the content. And let's look at the HTML markup. Look at this. Everything here in the right place. So this is how we set the priority of execution in the action hooks, alright? Well, what if I have two callback functions with the same priority on the same hook? Well, then WordPress will decide based on the order they come in the code, okay? One interesting detail is that you don't have to write the code in this order here. You can place the callback functions later if you want. Like this. See it? First, the add action here, then the callback function. Or even like so. See it? All the add actions down here. Or with the add actions here on top. Doesn't matter, okay? I can position it like this. Either way is fine, okay? In our plugins, we use PHP classes, and you see that many times the add action will be in a very separate place from the callback functions. And finally, there is one last parameter that can be passed to the add action, which is the number of arguments that the callback function can accept. This will vary depending on the action hook being used, alright? I will give you an example, but later in the course. You see, for example, that when we are saving a post in the database, we use a hook called save_post. Since it can also take two arguments, the post ID and the post object itself, we have to indicate this in the code. But this is for later. Well, that's all for this video. In the next lesson, some examples of filters. So, see you then.